For me, it's obvious. I've always had an instinct and a taste for competition.
De la compétition.
Matra construisait des voitures de sport.
Matra was manufacturing sports cars, and finally, Jean-Luc Lagadère's goal was to make a car pretty much similar to that of the Jaguar. He had a Jaguar, and he thought, we're going to make the French car, the exceptional French car.
Aucun pilote n'a pu vivre ça, ce que nous avons
What we've experienced, Belfast and I, was unique. We've been the only drivers to get this chance. It's been fabulous, the best time of my life.
On était fiers, on
We
travaillait
were proud, we worked with modern means and methods, and I was proud, of course. People were surprised. We told them, where do you work? At Matra. They said, oh, it's fabulous.
C'est une histoire qui commence par la fin.
It's a story that starts from the end, and the end is sad. A story of men and passions that now only finds its root amongst nostalgia. At the beginning of the year 2003, the adventure of Matra automobiles stopped with the closing of the factory in Romaintaran. Today, all that remains are memories whose colors and objects slowly disappear, as on a picture too long exposed to sunlight. Because before suffering a dark period, Matra shined for 40 years. A double success, both sporting and industrial, for a car manufacturer that had chosen to compete with the best, and in some way, this contributed to the philosophy of automobiles.
Matra avait clairement conscience depuis le début.
Since the beginning, Matra has always been clearly conscious that even in 1965, there were already so many constructors, and nobody waited for us to make cars. So we needed to find a positioning for the company that could explain our presence on the European car market of the day. Thus, with Mr. Lagadère, we immediately thought to go to motor racing. I remind you that we've won 124 races over 10 years, with 3 victories in the Le Mans 24-hour race. And we also thought about completing this competition activity with the construction of cars. Let's say different cars. And I mean by this, cars that others were not making, or were no longer making, or were not still making. This is the first Matra, the D-Jet, a small sports car first manufactured at the beginning of the 60s under the brand René Bonnet. It was at a time when Matra, specializing in weapons industry, decided to set off on the car market. In 1964, the name Matra replaced the name René Bonnet. The manufacture of the D-Jet continued on in a former textile factory in Romaintaran in the very heart of the Salon region. Claude Charbonnier, hired in January 1965, spent the longest time in the factory of Romaintaran, and he is considered as the historian of the site.
On va être obligé d'allumer, je pense.
Along with us, he comes back to the factory where he started at Building A, in which the D-Jet was manufactured.
C'était de l'artisanat parce que les voitures.
It was like a crafts industry because cars were totally handmade. Nothing was automated.
Fait manuellement, il n'y avait rien d'automatisé. Prenez les carrosseries de jet, il y avait
Have a look at the jet bodies. 2 people were around a mold and put in the fiberglass. The mold was assembled in 2 parts. The gel coat was then cast and the fiberglass adapted. Yes, it was truly incredible.
Le jet était sur des chariots.
The jet stood on a float with trestles where workers completed the mechanical components. It was really a bit basic. And then, once the wheels were assembled and the padding done, the cars were pushed from one workstation to another. There were workstations, and concerning the production lines, where they were at René Bonnet's, I can't remember, yes, in this direction, I believe. The years 1964 and 65 saw the early stages of Matra in competition. Starting from nothing, Jean-Luc Lagardère set a target. In 10 years, Matra must have won the Le Mans 24-hour race and obtained the title in Formula One. But this year 65 was then detrimental. At Reims in Formula 3, the fate of Matra was hanging in the balance with a still unknown young driver, Jean-Pierre Beltoise. About 40 years later, we came back with him at Reims on a circuit that had a great impact on his life. I don't forget the past, and I must say that being here on the site that was exceptional to me, you have to know that in 1964 I had an accident in which I almost died. At least I almost lost my arm. And by miracle, if I can say, my arm was saved because it was the beginning of antibiotics and penicillin. 1 year after, I won the first important race of my career. It was also the first victory for Matra. So, being here on this road, that I picture exactly how it used to be, in front of these stands that look the same but were clinking, brand new with advertisements of the day that you can still make out, of course it brings back memories for me.
Flambant neuf de publicité de l'époque que l'on voit ici, forcément ça me fait quelque chose.
The first victory was a decisive one. However, it was obtained in surprising conditions on a throw of the dice. On that day there were two pilots, Jean-Pierre Jassot and Jean-Pierre Beltoise, but for only one car. Jean-Pierre Jassot was in Claude Legou's good books. He was the race director at the time. So I knew that if I asked, I would not drive the car. So I delayed the term until the last moment, and we'd see what would happen. We were both wearing our helmets. No, not our helmets, but we were both wearing our racing suits. Talking with friends. We were quite good friends with Jean-Pierre, but in love and war, all was fair. And at the moment, I knew that the race was about to start, and I told myself, go on, get in the car. Unconsciously, I got in the car, and I knew if I got in the car, people would think that I was told to do so. I noticed that Jean-Pierre looked rather taken aback when he saw me getting in the car, but I tried not to look around. I got in quite quickly. I didn't fasten my seatbelt because there were no seatbelts to fasten at the time, and I started to talk with the mechanics as if I had been given orders. Finally, Beltoise won the race, and for the following 10 years, Matra stood out with blue cars that won and had a sure impact on the country in the 60s. On my disc lead appear some boats, cars, or skis. The purpose was to look for pictures slightly different from each other. Actually, when you take a picture, it is quite difficult to come to something really different. I made 57 sleeves, so 57 different pictures had to be found. My press officer wanted to take a picture in a racing car, and by chance we came across a Matra. I think that picture was taken in Montlhéry on a road that was closed to traffic. Anyway, seeing the lock in relation to the car, it seems perfectly clear that the car was stopped because the picture angle is not favorable. Well, yes, favorable to spin around in any case.
Et d'ailleurs, avoir l'angle des roues par rapport à la voiture, on voit très bien que la voiture a été arrêtée parce que l'angle de la photo n'est pas propice au tête à queue en tout cas.
It was also the time when the first real Matra came out, the M530, entirely developed by the engineers at Matra. Again, it was a small sports car. It was to be part of the current climate. Matra attempted to present it as the car of the 60s generation. A difficult bet when you know that the young generation's dream cars were mainly English, Italian, or American.